Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We welcome to Online Teaching Academy, Ekalaiva. Standard 11, Subject Biology, Chapter 5, Morphology of Flowering Plants. The study of various external features of the organism is known as morphology. Plant morphology is also known as external morphology, which deals with the study of external forms and features of different plant organs. Morphology is important in taxonomy, and morphological features are also significant for phylogeny. Plant morphology can be studied under two broad categories. One, vegetative morphology, which includes the study of shape, size and structure of plant parts such as root, stem and leaves. Reproductive morphology includes the study of structure of flowers, seeds and fruits. Habit. The general form of a plant is referred to as habit. Based on habit, plants are classified into herbs, which have soft stemmed plants with less or no wood, and shrubs are those woody plants with several main stems arising from the ground level, and trees are plants which has a stout main stem called trunk with many lateral branches. Depending upon where plants grow, may be classified the plants into terrestrial and aquatic. Under terrestrial, we will see the plants can be classified into mesophytes, the plants which are growing in soils with sufficient water, xerophytes which are growing on dry habitats, and the plants which are growing on rocks called as lithophytes. And the plants that are living in water environment are called as aquatic. They may be free floating or submerged. Based on the lifespan, we can divide the plants into annuals, those plants which complete its life cycle in one growing season, that is, vegetatively as well as reproductively, they complete their life cycle in one season. Example, paddy and peas. Biennials are those plants which lives for two seasons, growing vegetatively in the first season and flowering during the second season. Example, carrot, radish and turnip. And perennials are those plants which grow for many years, that flower and set fruits for several seasons. That is, they have vegetative phase as well as reproductive phase every year, and all these plants which are seasonal will come under perennials. Example, mango and banyan. In this we will find that if the plants bear fruits every year, then you call them as polycarpic. That is, every year you will find vegetative growth followed by reproductive phase, and then again it starts with vegetative, reproductive, it continues. Such kind of plants are called as polycarpic. And the plants which produce flowers and fruits only once and die after a vegetative growth of several years, such plants are called as monocarpic. Example, bamboo and musa. Now, if we look to the parts of a flowering plant or an angiospermic plant, you will find that the plant is having a system called root system, which is non-green, cylindrical, which is a descending axis of the plant that usually grows into the soil. And the one which is above, erect, aerial, is the one what we call it as a shoot system. And the shoot system has branches supported by leaves, the bud, the flower and the fruit. And the branches or the leaf which arise on the stem axis, you call it as a node, and the successive distance in between the nodes is called as an internode. And when we talk about the root system, we know that the root system is the one which grows underground, which is the descending portion of the plant body, and generally it is non-green in color as it lacks chlorophyll, so they are non-photosynthetic and they lack nodes and internodes, and they grow underground towards the gravitational force, so they are positively geotropic and negatively phototropic. And these roots bear root hairs and they help in absorbing water and minerals from the soil. Now, when we look into the regions of the root, you can see in the picture down the part, the root tip, which is covered by a parenchymatous cells called as root cap. And this root cap is protective, or it protects the above region, what we call it as meristematic region. As we know that the meristematic cells are those which are in a continuous state of division and they increase in number, and these cells after repeated division they have to elongate themselves or enlarge in size so that they increase in the length, and that region is called as region of elongation. And above the region of elongation, we will find the region of maturation. In this region, the cells differentiate into various tissues, and from there you will find like epidermis, cortex and vascular bundles when we see the anatomy of the structure of root. And the lateral roots which arises from internal tissue like pericycle, which helps in absorption of water and minerals, are endogenous in nature. So you can find the meristematic zone, zone of elongation and zone of maturation. So you will find here the root cap is protective in nature, and the meristematic zone is the zone where active division takes place, which adds growth to the root. And the zone of elongation is the region where the cells become elongated and increase in their size. And the zone of maturation is the cells where they get differentiated and they do specific function. When we see the difference between the types of the root, we will find here two types of root, a taproot and the fibrous root. And we know that the root is the part which comes from the radicle of the embryo, and in dicots you will find the primary root, which is the one which is long lived, and from there you will find the lateral branches arises, and it is the characteristic features of dicot. And in monocot, from the base of the stem you will find many lateral roots arises, because here the primary root is short lived, and all the roots which arises will be of the same length and thickness, and it is a characteristic feature of a monocot plant. As we see the difference between the types of the root system, you will find that the taproot is prominent in dicot, and the primary root is the one which grows and it is long lived and it becomes stout, and from where you will find the secondary and the tertiary roots which arise. In fibrous root system, we said it is prominent in monocots and it develops from the lower nodes, and they have the same length and diameter. And if the roots arise from any other part other than the radicle, we call it as adventitious roots. Now, we know that the root's main function is, the primary function is, it helps the plant to fix firmly in the soil, and it also helps in absorption of water and minerals. If the root performs additional functions, then you call it as modification. And to attain this modification, the roots are modified in their structure for performing different functions, like either they store the food material, they may provide a mechanical support, or they may do any other vital functions. So, here we will see the modification of the root in taproot as well as adventitious root modification. First, when we see taproot modification, we will see that the root is modified to store the food material. In this picture, you can see that the root is modified to 3 different forms. The first form is conical form, which we can see in carrot, where the roots are cone-like, broad at the base and gradually tapering towards. And the second one is what we call it as a fusiform, which is a spindle-shaped structure. And then the third one is the napiform, which is very broad and suddenly tapering down. So, here in all the 3, the roots are storing the food material. And the second picture what you see there, that is example of breathing roots, which you will find in plants like Avicennia. The plants which are growing, that is the mangrove plants which are growing in saline conditions, you will find the roots develop for respiration, and they have number of breathing pores called as pneumatothores. Okay? So, these roots are called as pneumatophores, and the small pores through which they respire, because of salinity, you call them as pneumatothores. Then, when we come to the adventitious roots modification, here they store the food material and they attain different forms. As you see in a sweet potato, you will find that swollen and which forms a bunch like, you call it as a tuberous root. And in fasciculated roots, for example, dahlia and asparagus, you will find that the roots arise in bunch from lower node of the stem, and the nodulous roots are those roots where you will find that the tip of roots are swollen, and beaded or moniliform are like the bead like structures where you will find swelling at regular intervals. You call them as beaded or moniliform. And then you will find annulated roots where the roots have series of ring-like swellings. Now, here you will find if they are providing a mechanical support, example, prop root. Here the roots grow vertically downward from the lateral branches into the soil, example, banyan tree. The next picture what you see are the stilt roots. These are thick roots you will find from the lower base of the node, which grows obliquely from the basal node, and these roots will provide mechanical support to the plant, where you will find in saccharum and Cbse. And this is what you call it as a buttress root. In certain trees you will find, you can look that there are broad plank-like outgrowth which develop towards the base all around the trunk, and they grow obliquely downward to provide support to huge trunks of the trees, and it is an important adaptation you will find for tall rainforest trees, example, silk cotton tree. The next picture what you can see is a climbing root. You know that the roots which helps in climbing are called as climbing roots. You will find in pepper. And this is an epiphytic root. Some epiphytic orchids, what do? They develop a special kind of aerial roots which hang freely into the air, and these roots develop a special tissue called as velamen tissue, and this velamen tissue will help in absorption of water and minerals from the surrounding air. The next example what you see in the picture are parasitic roots, and these roots, parasitic roots, are also called as hostorial roots or sucking roots, and you will find in plant called as cuscuta. Here the roots will penetrate into the stem of the host on which they grow, and those roots are called as hostorial roots, and they help in absorbing the nutrients on which they grow. And you will find photosynthetic roots also you will find, and these photosynthetic roots you will find in an example called as Ctenospora, where the roots develop chlorophyll and they turn green, which help in photosynthesis. So the modification helps either in storing of the food material or providing a mechanical support, or they perform some vital functions. We will see the next part of the plant parts, that is the stem, in the next class. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.